Well, hey man, I'm stoked to have you on and to be able to chat with you today. I know, we've been friends for a long time and both know a lot about each other's stories. And uh, I know in Eric's episode and in one of my earlier ones, I talked about like you got to have your like kind of your get out of jail list or whatever. And I know you're definitely on my hey, it's 11 o'clock at night. I need someone to come bail me out of jail, and I know you're a few hours away, but please come bail me out
Right.
list. Um, and like to that point too, on my hey, I'm really struggling. I need somebody to pray for me. I need somebody to lift me up. I need someone to encourage me or hold me accountable list. So excited, man, for you to kind of share your story. So like just for everyone listening and stuff, tell them like a little bit about you, and then we'll have some time for you to share your
Yeah,
story.
for sure. And I love that. You got to have the people in your life, right? And you got to have that circle, those people you can really count on no matter what. And they're there for you and don't
Yep.
expect anything in return. And I think that's reciprocal. So, a little bit
Yep.
about me and just my identity, right? I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm a brother. Uh, I'm an ultra marathon runner. I'm an OCR obstacle course racer. Do tough rucks, all of that stuff. And I'm a superintendent of schools, and now I'm starting to work in the space of executive coaching, consulting, speaking. But all those things, they're what I do, but they're not who I am. That they're a component of what makes up me as a total person, and I've really learned about a lot about myself, in recent years, and I'm excited to be here to tell that story.
Yeah, man. So tell me a little bit about that, because I know for me, for the longest time, it's what I do is who I am, and when some of that got stripped back, it was like I don't like where is it? So um, yeah, tell me a little bit about kind of that story and that journey.
I think, Joe, it happened. I've always been a person big on continuous growth, going hard, going big, and going all in when I go, right? Sometimes that's great, and sometimes that's not so great. It can lead to some balance issues or stuff like that. But it really started in COVID, and I was superintendent and moving school districts during COVID, and that was incredibly tough. Moving myself and my family to a new community, meeting people, behind masks, meeting people on screens like this, and I really started to question, you know, who am I, right? Because outside of the superintendent space and moving to a new community, I didn't know anybody and I didn't have an identity outside of that. And so I really just started working hard on my physical health, my mental toughness. It's a huge piece of what I do and who I'm about now, and that mental toughness and perseverance and personal growth. And you've heard me say enough, get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's where the growth happens. And really went on a big transformation over the last probably 3 years, especially. I went from being I am the most unlikely ultramarathon runner you're ever going to meet. I was 304 pounds 5 years ago, and I lost 100 pounds. I started running ultra marathons. Doing we Another good friend Jennifer Garrison and we did the Tough Mudder Holy Grail, and we've run a ton of those. The Probably the two big ones that I'm most proud of is the 12-hour overnight America's Toughest Mudder. I ran that with my son Cy. It's something we'll always cherish, and also an old man like me to be able to run with the 20-year-olds was great. And then, Jen and I ran the world's toughest mudder, and that was the first time I ran 50 miles, right? And then did 200 obstacles while I did that over a 24-hour period. It was crazy. And then got into the ultra running space. And last summer, I've ran now I think 5 ultra marathons and never ran a. I ran 5 ultra marathons in about 5 months last summer, and I've never ran a marathon, other than, like, training runs by myself, but I've never ran a
Yeah.
marathon, and I went into that space, and, so it was a really huge transformation, but then over the course of the last year, especially the last 6 months, I've really been dealing with a lot of adversity, and I'm the person who says, "Hey, you aren't you are not what you do." I've said that, and then when I was really faced with adversity, I realized I had more to learn than I realized, about my identity, and I think what I've come to realize just recently is my comfort. Even though I do some really hard things, there was other things where I was very comfortable, and my comfort disrupts my growth. And you have to be willing to step out there into that uncomfortable place, and you have to be willing to embrace the winter seasons of your life to be able to grow.
Yeah, so and if correct me if I'm wrong, I think you did a 24-hour ruck too, didn't you? Um,
It was like a 13-hour ruck. Yeah, yeah.
gotcha.
Jen and I did that.
I
That was funny because her and I wanted to.
I think you remember texting during that or
Oh,
something like that, that you were giving us updates during it. It was that was the one, your feet blistering up
oh,
and all
we
that,
wanted to
so,
do this thing.
yeah.
It was on Veterans Day. It was on Veterans Day years
Yeah.
ago, and we show up at this park in Indianapolis, Indiana, right? And I'm thinking, okay, man, we're just gonna ruck, right? So I've got a 40-pound rucksack on with all the gear and all that. I'm like, okay, cool. And I knew it was gonna be hard. And they have this ex special forces guy as your cadre for this thing. And here's how this 13-hour overnight event started. We have to start unpacking and repacking our rucksacks within a certain amount of time. And y'all know this special forces guy is not going to let us get this. And then he would just smoke us with
Gr
exercise when we wouldn't get it. Then we went over, they called it the welcoming party. We did the Chad 1000 with 40-pound rucksacks on. So we did 1,000 step
Jeez.
ups to honor, a veteran who had committed
Yeah.
suicide. And that was the first hour. And I turned and looked at Jim and I said, we just did the Chad 1000. We got like 12 hours to go. And so we start rucking. Well, what I did, we went on this little ruck and we're carrying all these canvas sacks, right? I'm like, what's going on here? We go down to the river. There was 35, I think there was 35 people that were on this ruck. They had 32 pieces of equipment. We filled it all with sand in a certain amount of time. And we spent the rest of the night carrying anything from 40-pound to 100-pound sandbags, 35 of those between the 38 people for 12 hours. And you would ruck from one war memorial to another war memorial. And when you got to the war memorial, they would smoke you with PT. And then you would have a little break. When I say a little break, it was a little break, right? And then you would ruck to the next carrying all these weight and stuff. And my wife went with us and she picked us up the next morning and drove Jen and I back to the hotel. And she said we were like speaking gibberish. Like we don't remember it. She was just like, you two didn't even, you made sense to each other. Like we were having a conversation, but I couldn't understand what you said.
Yeah.
So that was definitely some discomfort there.
So talk me through a little bit, Dan, about how, like, you think, because I know you started doing some of that stuff before, obviously, the last year, last 6 months, but talk me through how you feel like some of that helped prepare you like, for what you're walking through right now and what you've been walking through.
Um, Man, so a story, I think one of the most transformational moments of my life was in a winter season. And I can say you can always find good. If you're going through struggle and you don't find the opportunity, you don't look for the opportunities there and you don't grow and get better, you've really lost a real opportunity and gift. Because every struggle and in every winter season, there is real opportunity for growth. And COVID was one of those for me for a host of reasons, but the biggest, and this doesn't sound like an opportunity for growth because it's incredibly sad, but um, at the beginning of the school year, that would have been what, 2020, 2021 that we were in.
Yeah.
My sister, my older sister, who had been a career educator and a long, long time principal, she calls me, and on the first day of the school year, she was diagnosed with cancer. And COVID allowed her to. It was her, and not only was it cancer, we knew it was likely terminal, and it was her retirement year. It was the year she was supposed to retire, and then do what's next, her next chapter, all the things she'd been looking forward to.
Right.
And so COVID did allow her to finish that year because she didn't have to work in person. She was able to take treatment and
Yeah.
thankfully she had another year past retirement. And so, that year after she retired, I saw her just going through the struggle. And I was getting into better shape at the time. I was still not a runner, right? And I said, "Man, I see her going through this treatment. I want to do something." Um, I want to do something that's hard, something I wouldn't normally do, something I really don't enjoy. Like, I'm going to run a marathon. I just shouted, I'm going to run a marathon. I don't know why. Brother,
Yeah.
I couldn't run for 2 minutes. I couldn't run for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. And so all my friends who were runners like, Dan, you've never done this. Marathons are hard. Run a half marathon because it's still really hard. People truly don't know the difference and they think it's super cool. So I did. I signed up and we started training for this half marathon. Just a few days before the half marathon, she passed away. Right. And so I still run that half marathon, Chicago half. It's become a very special race to me. I still run it. But
Yeah, I'm sure.
I ran that half, and when I was done, something happened that I didn't expect. So, man, that was fun. I liked it. I'm like, I'm gonna do. I had no intention of doing that anymore. But it was about a week out, and I sit down, and I'm a very reflective person. I journal, and I said, why didn't I run the marathon? Why didn't I do that? And I came up with two conclusions. Conclusion number one was I let people talk me out of it. I let people bring my goals down. And they were friends and they were well-meaning. I'm not mad, but I was like, people pull me
Yeah.
back and pull me back. But here was the big one. I had to look in the mirror. I ran the half marathon because I knew I could. I always knew I could run that thing. I'm like, even when I could only run 2 minutes, I'm like, I can run a half marathon if I train. I've got 6 months to train. I can do this. I didn't know if I could run the marathon. And that was the first time in my life I said, "You know what? You gotta do something that scares you. You gotta make it public. You gotta do something you don't know if you're gonna finish or not. Make it public to have accountability and start before you're ready. Get out there
Yeah.
and do that before you're ready." So I think, that was the beginning. That was a really special moment, a gift my sister gave to me, that I will never let go of, because that was a gift my sister gave to me during that time. And if you'll indulge me, I've told this story before. Year
Yeah.
later, I've not I don't think I've told this story on a podcast. A year later, um, I go to run this race, right? And, you get the little race T-shirts like I have. I ran one this morning, right? You get the race T-shirts, you get the medals, and I saw the preview, but the preview wasn't really good, and they had flowers. They had flowers on the shirts, and I'm like, "Oh, come on, man, flowers!" And you couldn't really tell what it looked like. And then I saw the medal, and the medals were big flowers. I'm like, "All right, whatever. I'm still running this race because it's special to me." And I went up and I ran that race. And when I got my shirt before the race, my sister's favorite flowers were purple and they were purple flowers all over the shirt. I'm like,
Man, how cool is that?
then when I crossed the finish line, my medal was a huge purple flower. And as I crossed, a lady gave me a potted plant and there was all kinds of colors. She gave me a purple flowers when I crossed the finish, like a little potted plant, purple flowers when I crossed the finish line. I'm like, oh, wow. I mean, it gives me chills to this day. But again, that's when I knew I meant to do something here. I meant to see how far and how hard I can push myself. So what I did after that, I got the bright idea. I said, I'm going to get payback for not running that marathon. I never have run a marathon, right? I said, I'm going to run an ultra marathon. I just skipped it because I knew at that point I ran the half. I knew I could run the marathon. I said, I'm not doing that again. I'm gonna run an ultra. I'm gonna do it, right? Not only did I do it, I went all in and ran 5 in 5 months.
That's so well, and I think there's like one, I think in those moments where, like you said, when like if you're not looking for something good all the time, you're never gonna see it. You're never gonna find it, right? Um, and like there's a banner behind this. What good shall I do today? And I think it's that idea like, hey, we have to look for it. We have to, and I think on top of that too, like there are a lot of times in life where things are presented in front of us in the present that should be anchoring, should be connecting us, should be reminders, should be things that do that. But we are so busy thinking about and worrying about all the other stuff that we don't notice that. And like, at least for me, like just listening to you hear that, it just was a reminder for me of like how many times, like how many finish lines do I cross every day doing different things, but I'm not paying attention to them. And so I don't know if I'm being handed a purple flower. I don't know if I'm being handed a purple medal because I'm not paying attention to it, and now I've missed that moment. And, I was thinking back to your talking about that ruck, right? Going memorial to memorial to memorial, and, kind of the analogy of like, hey, like that almost is the analogy for life, right? Like and when we're not paying attention, it's just like, hey, we're gonna beat it till we get to this next monument, only to realize it's a memorial for the war we just did. And now we got to go fight another one. And we're pissed off that like we got to keep going and doing it because all we want to do is, and life just doesn't give us, there are those winter seasons, but life just doesn't, I don't think life gives many people just a full season of nothing.
No,
And
that's not life.
and if you are, you're lying to yourself, probably.
We are built. We are built to suffer, and we are built for discomfort. And I'm a you know person of faith, a man of faith, and a lot of things. You have to be a willing to accept things you don't understand. You have to be willing to accept God has a plan. However, I was talking with a really close friend this week about that. That doesn't mean you sit and wait for things to happen. Um, Faith is not a passive thing. It's an active thing and it's action. So when you're in a winter season, it doesn't mean you just sit around and say, well, I'm just going to wait for this thing to pass or for something good to happen, because that's not how it works. You were equipped, to make your own actions and decisions, and you have to take care of yourself there. And so I think, in a way, what's happened is it's helped me. That part of my life helped me prepare for where I am today, and find some passions and some identities and some superpowers that I didn't know I had, that are helping me through again a very difficult time now, but it's also allowing me to help others and expand my view of where I can connect, where and who I can learn from, and where and who I can help. I always limited myself into a very niche space with superintendents and educators, and that's still a love and a passion of mine. I'm into a
Yeah.
broader space now, and really working with, learning from, learning with, and helping teach all kinds of people, and I really love that. It's been a passion, and I'm just scratching the surface. But I wouldn't have had that without adversity then and now, and being able to learn and grow during those times.
So, like, as you've gone through stuff now, like when you hit some of those moments that are those walls that are the like, hey, you having those conversations of where we really have to like remind ourselves over and over again because cognitively we may be able to justify and reconcile that like, yeah, God has a plan. There's something out there. This is a purpose, but like, and I think you told me it not too long ago, when we were having a conversation. It's okay to also just say, hey, it just kind of sucks right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's still okay to say, like, "Hey, this is just a little bit shitty right now, and it just kinda sucks." That's okay. But to do that like, how do
Rest.
you do that? Yeah, like, I've got that on one of my bags too, the patch, right? Like, you embrace the suck um, but talk like, how has that journey transitioned and transformed for you over this, kinda that same period of
It's a
time?
great question. Um, so how it's transitioned from the trail to life. People ask me, they're like, how do you run? How do you run 100 miles? How do you run 50 miles? How do you do that? You put one foot in front of the
Yeah, I still don't
right.
know
You,
either.
you you put one foot in front of the other, right? But the other thing is you shorten your horizon. If you think about running 100 miles, 50 miles, 30 miles, right? It's going to become overwhelming and you're never going to get it done. I truly out there, I think about, I'm just going to start with one foot in front of the other, and I'm just going to get to the next aid station. I'm going to get to the next celebration point. I have certain points of the race, no matter where I am. I'm like, okay, this is a mile marker for me, and it's a special mile marker. So I might have a,
Yeah.
a treat, like a piece of candy saved back in my vest. I'm like, okay, when I hit this mileage mark, I'm going to pull out this piece of candy, and that's going to be my celebration. Just a little reward for making it to that point. The other thing that I tell myself is, this will pass. Okay. So there are times in that race, in that run, where you're like, this sucks. Why am I doing this? I ran the Shawnee Trail last summer, my first 100-mile attempt, and man, I took a huge wipeout. Another funny story, but I took this huge wipeout and I fell in a pile of horse crap, a whole metaphor to that, and it's 93 degrees, right? And I get up and I'm running with this horse crap on me and it's 93 degrees. You know, I'm venturing in on a marathon mark. I think I just hit the marathon mark. I'm like, what am I doing? My friends are on boats. They're at the golf course. They're doing that. And I'm out here running in 93-degree heat covered in manure, right? Like, what am I doing? And I'm like, this sucks. But then a little while later, I'm like, this will pass. And a little while later, I felt great. And throughout the course of that night,
Yeah.
this is horrible. I'm like, this will pass. Then I'm like, I feel great. And here's the thing people don't realize when you feel great, it's going to pass. It's going to pass. So take that into life and take that to the question you just asked. You know, when you're in adversity, it's not going to last forever. And if you're tempted to say, why me? Why is this happening to me? I would challenge you to say, why not me? Why am I so special? Why am I so special that I my life should be perfect and it should be everybody else that suffers. I'm not any more unique. So there's a gift here if I just find that. And guess what? This isn't going to last forever. There is going to be a good feeling and a good day ahead. And that's where I blend trail and life together and prepare myself for that endurance. And, you know, I'll circle back around to the beginning of this. Before I was even out running on the trail, it was more simple than putting one foot in front of the other. I literally, when I first started running, put my tennis shoes by my bed. And that's the first thing I did every morning. I put them on. Before I got ready, before I brushed my teeth, my wife thought I was insane. I was putting my tennis shoes on. I didn't
Yeah.
even have my running clothes on, right? What
Yeah.
that made me do was a trigger and I walked out that door. So whatever you have to do in life, you have to be an ultra marathon runner, but what is that thing that you're going to find that you're going to do and you're going to build upon and stack those habits that prepare yourself for the difficult days? Because I just told the same friend this morning, he's like, I can't believe you just kind of casually signed up because I didn't know if I was going to run this half trail this morning or not. Last time I signed up, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to run. He's like, I can't believe you just casually signed up for that and weren't even really. I'm like, hey man, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, right? I mean, I had two choices this morning: lay in bed, chill out, drink coffee, talk to you this morning, or go romp through the woods and tear my hand up and rip it all up and do all of that, right? But you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And that's how I'm gonna live the rest of my life.
And and one, I commend you for it, man. Like I've been able to watch it. And so for me, it continues to be something that's encouraging. So I hope you know
Thank you.
that. Um, but I think one of the biggest things too, and it's the Mel Robbins, right? Like the just count back from 5 and then do it,
Right.
right? Trigger like just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, then go, right? Just do it. And you look at anything for like how do you have a better morning routine? How do you have a better night routine? How do you it's all about like plan these things out, do this
True.
ahead. But even this morning, like I was up, I was getting going, and I'm in the process of moving, and I was like, I don't want to carry stuff downstairs. Like I hate move. I don't want to move stuff down. But it was one of those things where I was like, I just have to start and then hope it comes. And if it doesn't, you know what? Too bad. I got to do it anyway. I don't have a choice, right?
Yeah.
Like it's got to get done at some point. And so there's some things we just got to do.
So I'll ask you. Let me ask you
And
a question, Joe. You were sitting there
yeah,
thinking, I don't want to do this, right? Do you think I want to get up at 4 in the morning and go run 10 miles on a Tuesday morning? No, right? You got a lot of stuff to move downstairs, right? You told
yeah,
yourself, hey, I'm just going to move one box down. That's it.
yeah.
One
Make
box.
the, yeah.
And you know what? Chances are you're going to move more. And when you do the first one, chances are you're going to move more.
And that was exactly kinda where I
Good.
started, was I'm gonna you know what? I'm gonna get up, like, I had to go downstairs anyways, I'm gonna get up, I'm gonna take something down with me when I go down. There's no reason to not carry it down when I go downstairs now, I gotta move it down. So I took one thing and I'm like, "Get the rest of the boxes that are sitting in the hall." So when I got the rest of the boxes and then transparently by that point, I am not an ultra marathon runner yet, or probably ever, but, with the needs of an 80-year-old man, but, like, I was like, "You know what? Like, I'm sweating. I'm a little out of breath for a second. I'm gonna sit for a second. I've got some work that I can work on,
Yeah.
and I gave myself a set, but it wasn't that I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna just quit and I'm gonna go watch TV." It was, "I'm gonna sit for a second and pause," and all of a sudden it was like, "I'm gonna go grab a handful more things now. I gotta go back up and get this anyway," and it's kind of become throughout the course of the day today to a
Yeah.
certain extent, when I go up, something must come down, right? And it's true. It's that first step is the hardest one to take, but
Yeah, well,
there's never a fifth step without the first one.
100%. And, I said earlier that I'm kind of an let's go all in, let's go hard, let's
Right.
do it, man. And I said that can be a real superpower and blessing. It can also be a detriment. And here's why. This conversation we just had makes me think of here's why. Um, we too often we think it's got to be all or nothing in our lives, right? Whether it's our fitness, whether it's our health, whether it's your family or work, we think, well, if I can't go all the way, then I can't go. And one day I had to get a run in, and I still really balance my family and family life. And I'm like, man, I do not have time. Whatever the mileage was, it's like I don't have time to run 15 miles today. I'm not so I'm just not running today. And my wife, Julie, I mean, she's just a rock star, right? And Julie looks at me and she goes, "So how many can you get?" I'm like, "I can probably get 7 or 8 in." And she goes, "Well, which is better, 7 or 8 or 0?" Yeah. So I went out and got my 7 or 8 in, and I felt great, and because she knew I would just be whining and moping and beating myself up the rest of the day if I didn't. And then I went out, I was like, "Man," and at the time I was like, and I didn't wanna go was the other truth. I was like, "I really
Right.
wanna go." But I've never regretted whenever once I start or once I do something, I've never regretted it. There are times I'm like, "I don't feel good today." I don't wanna get the total mileage in today. I'm like, "But I'm gonna go and get what I can get." And what I have found, I don't think there's
Yep.
been a time when I said, "I don't feel good, so I'm just gonna cut my mileage short. I'm just gonna run how I feel." I don't think there's a time I've never met my goal, because once I get out there and get going, then it's just kinda like, "All right, I'm here. Might as well do this," right? You
Yep.
start feeling good, and I've the only run I've ever regretted is the one I didn't take. And again, that goes back to the things we have to do. When we know we have to do it, the only regret you have is not
Yeah.
doing it, because it's still there tomorrow.
Right. And I think it's, the age old story. There's so many people on, how many people on their deathbed are telling you how many of the regrets they have of the things they did versus the things they didn't do. Right. But i- as you talk about that too, I used to talk to teachers and, people and tell them like, hey, if you come in, you got 50% to give today and you come in and give that 50%, you still gave 100% of what you had um, that day, right? And it's going in and giving what you've got during that time and finding some of that balance. And I love that you talked and brought Julie up. And one of the things that I think is really cool too is just knowing you and knowing like the support that is around you and the people that you've allowed to let you lean on them and to let them push and kind of pulled you back with that, but you've had people push. And one of the analogies like I've told kids, um, and that I really like is like if you're standing on a chair, you'll never pull me up, but I can pull you off of that chair real quick. But I can push you and you can push me. And unless I'm willing to be pulled up and ready to be pulled up, people are going to pull you down more often. But I think to me, the thing that I've seen with you that I've has been really cool too, and I think kind of brings it all full circle, right? Is that you've allowed yourself to have people that you do lean on, right? Like
Yeah.
seeing Julie this past fall and being able to chat with her and knowing the kid, knowing your friends and stuff, and being one of them, like I know how you lean and are
Yeah.
vulnerable enough to do that. So do you think that has changed for you over the past few years too, in your vulnerability to be able to accept that support?
Yeah, each year, I try to really say this is what I'm going to hone in and focus on, right? Because health and wellness and your wellness is not just one thing. It's
Right.
not just fitness, right? That's part of it. your health, your fitness health, but then your just health, going to the doctor, doing all that stuff,
Yeah.
your mental health, your financial health, your spiritual health, your family health. It's all a picture. So it's like, okay, what am I going to work on? And a couple years ago, my mental health and my mental toughness was a huge piece of what I wanted to work on, and I'm glad I did, and still have a lot of work to do. But what I've told myself, especially probably over the last 6 months or so, something I have written that I hang up and see every day is let go, lean in, and wait. And let go is really let go of the things I can't control. But the lean in is lean in to my family, my friends, and my faith with vulnerability.
Yeah.
That might be the biggest place I've grown, on that side of things is to say, hey, I do need help, or I do need to lean in. And I have a lot of people like, hey, what can I do to help you? And I said, that's a great question. Just be there, right? Just
Yeah.
just and then the wait is wait patiently to accept my reality with sober clarity and radical. That doesn't mean I'm just waiting around for good things to happen. It's mean I'm waiting for sober clarity, right? Waiting for radical hope, but I'm out there taking action. And I think that's an area that's allowed me to grow. And what I'd like to, link that to what that's done. Because I've talked about fitness and running and all that stuff. That's my link. It doesn't mean it's somebody else's. One day somebody said, "Dan, I don't want to do what you do." I said, "I don't blame you. I think it's kind of crazy, quite frankly." But I'm like, "What do you want to do?" Like, "Well, I love to garden." I'm like, "Good, do that. That's a good workout, right?" I have another friend. He's like, "Brother, I am not going to spend 3 hours on a Saturday running." I'm like, "Good, you shouldn't." But what do you like to do? I love to golf. Lose the cart, brother. Walk it. And that's what he's been doing. And he loves it. He's like, I never even thought about that. So there's always kind of things, but what it did, and going back to the identity we talked about at the beginning, um, I didn't realize still how much my identity was rooted into my job. And I've been talking for 3 years about what I'm going to do when I retire, just like my sister. Lisa talked about when I retire, this is what I'm going to do, and I can't wait. To quote Eric Thomas, you don't have as much time as you think. We don't have as much time as we think we do.
Yeah.
You just start, right? Just start.
Yeah.
Start before you're ready. So I've been talking for 3 years about what I'm going to do when I retire. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to have my own business, and I'm going to coach. I'm going to help people. I'm going to consult, do these things. I want to speak. I want to share my story. And these are the things I talked about doing, and knowing there's a lot of infrastructure, right, to set up with that. All of that. You're going through, you
Yeah.
went through that with LLCs and all the taxes and all the things you got to do. And I was just talking about it. Well, then I'm in a winter season, right? And I wrote this down actually, Joe, a week ago tomorrow. It was last week I wrote this down. My calling will disrupt my comfort, because my comfort is
Man.
completely disrupted right now. And my calling will disrupt my comfort. And I sit back and look back, and guess what? My LLC's set. I'm starting to do the things I talked about doing 7 years from now. How deep and how far I'll go with those things over the next 7 years, I don't know. But what I do know is I will have a huge head start. And who knows if I'm guaranteed that opportunity 7 years down the road. Right. So here I am today. And so that let go, lean in, and wait, and looking for those opportunities and leaning on friends and actually taking help. And the last piece was fear. And I don't like to say this, but here's the vulnerability. I had a really tough meeting this week, and I sitting at the desk I'm sitting at right now. I literally just after the meeting was over, put my head down, and I prayed, and I set back up and I wrote the word down, fear, in all caps. I wrote the word fear down, and a talk came to me. I attended a Fellowship of Christian Athletes dinner earlier this year, and the speaker
Yeah.
about Psalms 26:13, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken. I don't have it down to a T, but the paraphrasing that, there's a lion in the street and you are about to be mauled, and that lion is fear, and that lion's the lazy person's excuse for inaction, or the scared person's excuse for inaction. And I had to have a real heart to heart with myself about doing these things and chasing my calling. And the reality is this: it was fear. It was fear out of well, what will people think? What will people say about me?
Yep.
What if I'm not successful? You know, what if, well, I don't have time. I don't have this. I don't have that. And it hit me. I go, man, if I don't do this, if I don't keep moving forward, I'm going to be talking about this for the next 7 years. And I'm never going to do that. So the next thing I wrote down was, so what? And so that allowed me, that fear allowed me, and the realization that a lot of times it's us, it's not everybody else, it's not everything else. And so then to be able to look at, well, look at the opportunities I have now to be able to do these things, and really link what you do as a vehicle, to help you carry out your mission, to help you carry out your purpose and your why, because it's going to change
Yes.
what you're doing right now. The various things you're doing in your life right now, Joe, as a vehicle to share your message and to make your impact. Do you really think they're the last things you're ever going to do?
Hell, what? One, I hope not, but it's it's right, and it's so one, I have the text you sent me screenshotted, right? Because I remember I'm one of the lucky ones that got the message from you, I think probably right after that,
It was.
of just who cares? Who cares? Right? And it reminds me, it's the man in the arena stuff. It's the like we're not promised anything beyond. Like I'm not promised to have this or be there when this comes out, right? And so it's the what am I going to do now? What are we going to do now, right now, instead of talking about it, waiting for it, do it, and and I think same as you that ability to say, uh, I'm not God, I'm just a human. I'm
Yeah.
just a like so I'm not I got faults and failures and brokenness just like everybody else. And so, you talk about your faith. I am too. And I had kind of this epiphany a couple weeks ago, at a retreat, and I thought, well, like I've been afraid of being rejected my whole life. Man, a person I have faith in got rejected. If he did, why the hell would I think I won't? Like,
Right.
what am I afraid of? Right?
Well,
Like, why am I afraid to get rejected if there's that, right? And so, but it's true, and I love like yeah, that let I wrote it down here, that let go, lean in, and wait. And it's the I think that like all of like we have such a hard time with all that, right? Because it's so much easier to hold on to the winter, the cold,
mm,
the heavy, the right? And now I'm saying preaching to myself on that, right? It's so much easier to hold on to those things because holding on to it maybe provides some warmth, right? Maybe it makes us feel a little better. But in the end, we feel pretty lonely. We feel pretty empty. We feel pretty withdrawn, pretty isolated, pretty alone. Um, but it's that idea that like if we can just let go a little bit and actually allow other people to be a part of our lives, to exist in community, because just like you said, like we're made to have a purpose bigger than our vocation, right? It like we're made to be in community and to
well,
have that together.
100%. And again, we're made, the adversity is going to happen. Great
Yep.
lives are accompanied by great burdens. I mean,
Yep.
that's just the reality of where we are. And nothing really worthwhile happens in our lives without some opposition. And our biggest opponent is ourselves. We spend way too much time, because we are really self-centered. We think people think about us more than they do. The
Yep.
biggest opponent typically is yourself, right?
Yep.
And so nothing worthwhile happens without opposition. So if you can get past yourself, you can probably get past the rest of it.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things that we also forget, for everybody that watches sports and does that, like everybody that's in the Hall of Fame in any sport did whatever they did with less than 50% accuracy at best.
Yeah,
And in some
that's
sports
true.
with less than 30% accuracy, right? And it's just one of those things where it's like, well, if we're putting people in a Hall of Fame for a sport that they're getting paid millions of dollars to do, and through their career, they only did the thing, hit the ball 32% of the time in their whole career, and that's Hall of Fame stats. Maybe we should give ourselves a little bit more permission
Yeah.
to swing and miss. But I'll tell you as a baseball coach, and I know my dad always said, preach this as a baseball coach. I know you know this as a, baseball guy and sons that are based like, just don't leave the bat on your shoulder for strike 3.
Right.
At least swing. Take a swing at it, right? Don't go up and leave the bat on your shoulder for the whole at bat because why go up then? And, you talked about, me knowing some of that stuff with the consulting or doing it. Like, and I had to remind myself in the Man in the Arena, in the middle of it, it talks about the man who errs again and again. We all like to talk about like the win, the finish of the race, the right, but we literally in your Tough Mudders or you're crawling through mud. You fell in horse crap. You scraped up your hand today, right? Like, and it's one of those things where it's like literally in it. We have those things. We slip, we fall, we do all of that, and that is, I think, just such a great metaphor for life, for leadership, for all of those things. Because again, if you would have slipped and fell and hurt yourself, you don't lay there and heal yourself alone. Somebody comes and they have to help you. And in those moments, we have to let go and we have to let them.
My favorite race I ran was the Shawnee Hills 100. It was my first and to date my only 100-mile attempt. There'll be more. It was my favorite race. It's the only one I haven't finished. I made it like 80 some odd miles, right? And before I was done. I was hallucinating,
Yeah.
couldn't take fluids, was passed out. I passed out on the trails, on my feet, passed, boom, right? I was Jennifer Garrison was my pacer at the time. I don't really remember much of it. Somebody was like, "Man, you spent all that time. You wasted your time." I'm like, "Brother, I ran like 80 miles. That's still a really good run, you know? That's a."
Right.
But I learned so much from that race, and the reason it's my favorite, one, it continues to drive me, but I learned so much because if you woulda saw the terrain, if you woulda saw the heat we were dealing with, I know I can run 100 miles. I know it, right? And so it's just like, after that, and it was just like, man, and there was 35 runners and there was 8 finishers. So I was like, I know I can do this. That thing was hard. But everything you just talked about, that race was a metaphor for that because I had to have a team. My wife Julie's my crew chief. Her best friend, a good friend of our family, Mel Reynolds, she was there as our nurse and like the food and the nutrition person,
Yeah.
care of my feet, for God's sake. She's the one who had the white crap off of my arm. Those 2 as my team, they did all the research. They did all the here's the aid stations, here's calorie count. I didn't have to think. All I had to do was run. But then you think about Kristen Humphreys. Kristen drove from Moline all the way down to Shawnee National Forest. Jennifer Garrison came over and they met me in the middle of the night because I could get pacers at 50 miles. And those 2 dropped their lives, dropped their families to come meet me in the middle of Shawnee National Forest in the middle of the night and take turns helping me run, through
Yeah.
this really difficult race. And I couldn't have done that without them, and so I'm like, "Man, look at all the things that I learned." The help, I mean, I in my mind before that race, I don't want to pacer, I don't want to pacer, I don't want to burden anybody, I don't want to put anybody out.
Yes.
And I look at that, I'm like, "Wow," but then it made fast forward when I needed help in other parts of life, I thought back to that and I'm like, "Man, it's okay, and people wanna help, and it's actually, man, you're so much stronger when you do that." And they just what they did just ran in front of me and they just kinda cleared the path to make sure, I was still going. And it is. That's why I love this and I can say, the lessons I learned from the trail, I can turn and take into other places and we can do so much more than
Yeah.
we're capable of doing. Um,
And
we hold ourselves back.
I think we try to do it on our own,
Yeah.
alone. And when we do that, you're absolutely right. You don't make it to 80 plus miles alone.
No, no.
You don't make it to and it's and so it's just one of those things that like I think we spend like how often do we spend so much time going and I use the analogy like it's my coaching my kids basketball team. They lost like 20 something to 2, but they were all excited because they played as a team. They had fun together. They did it and like I was like it's always better to lose 27 to 2 than it is to try and win 20 to nothing on your own because I would always rather do that. And I think we forget that when we show those signs of vulnerability, that's far more of a strength than it is a weakness. That's us saying, "Hey, I want you And I think it's also a sign too that we see more abundance in life, that we see the ability to see greatness in others, that we see gifts in others and admit that like, "Hey, I'm not God, I'm just a human, I'm just a person," and makes you feel a little less alone that like we're in this together. And you've gotten the text from me, I've gotten them from you, and it just is, your story is it, and I think it makes me want to go out and run. I'm not going to. I'm just telling you
Uh,
that right now to be clear.
you're good.
Yeah,
Go,
I mean, we'll
go.
yeah, we'll see if I mean, if unless something like there's a high chance of death, I'm not sure that running is in my immediate future. Carrying stuff from upstairs to downstairs is,
That's cool. Joe,
but
I was thinking about that, that what those things you're sharing there, it just jogged, my memory. I haven't thought about this much, but at the 60, it was like 62-mile mark. I come running in at 62 miles at 3 in the morning. It was one of my favorite pictures. Julie met me, at the finish. That's the 100K mark. And we were high fiving, middle of the night. And man, I was in the hurt locker. And that's another thing I love about it, because when you're out there in the middle of the night by yourself, out on a trail, no music, no nothing, you go to some places in your soul, you learn some things, right? And I come in and
yeah,
in that hurt locker, and my team, they're massaging my calves and taking care of my feet, and I'm changing clothes, and I sit down in this chair, and I just had to have a minute, and I started to cry, right? I'm by myself. I'm like, everybody leave me alone. I'm like, and I just sit there, I started crying. Julie come over and she just held my head, right? She stood there and held my head. And she's like, what's going on? I said, I don't think I've got 40 miles in me. She goes, you don't need 40 miles. She goes, "Do you have one?" I go, "Yeah, I got one." And then Jen Garrison, Kristen, or no, yeah, KH was my pacer at that time. I just dropped Jen, I think, if I remember. I just dropped her as a pacer, and KH was picking me up, and he got me through that next section, and it's like, man, we were feeling good. And then the next section out was Jen Garrison, and if you know Jen, man, hey, you don't have much time to feel sorry for yourself, right? So
yeah,
we
you're gonna go.
there was no, hey, but we
Yeah,
did. We rolled off some miles. Her and I rolled off some really tough miles there in the middle of the night, and it was a blast, and again, it just made me think about that though. Those people picked me up, because without those 3 or 4 people at that moment, I was happy getting my 100K belt buckle. I mean, I was like, yeah, I was like, let's go back to the Airbnb and call it. But I went back out,
right.
I wouldn't trade it for the world. And I'll be back out there. That's gonna be, I'll be back out there, and I'll get that 100-mile buckle here one of these days.
Yeah. Well, man, I know that even just like I know you, but even just sitting here talking, like there's so many things that are running through my head, um, thinking about uh, things that I want to reflect on and take and uh, and I think that as you were saying that so often in life we limit ourselves to that 100K buckle, to
Yeah.
that 100K medal, because we're like, well, I got far enough. Yeah, I mean, it's this is a bit where I'm good, right? And it's we don't lean in to other people. We do it when it's hard, but what about when like we've already gotten to that point where we've gotten the accolade or we've gotten the spot, but we know we can do more. Are we leaning in then too? And that's where like that to me is a huge one too.
Well,
And I think
at that point,
that's beautiful.
I had more in me, right? When
Yeah.
I went down, I was literally walking with my trek pole,
Yeah.
Jen, and I said, "Oh," and I was like, "Oh, Jen," and I went down.
Mhm.
We still got up and walked like 3 or 4 more miles to get off the course to the next aid station. So even then, but I was like, "Okay, what was my choice?" I had a little left in the tank, or am I gonna go till it's time, till,
Mhm.
we don't stop when we're finished, we stop when we're done, right? And
Yeah.
at that point, I was hoping done was the finish line. Done was somewhere face down in the Shawnee National Forest, but I got up and got it done, and wouldn't trade that for anything, because it's really developed a core within me that's transitioned over into, my friendships, my faith, my profession, that's just been so valuable, and everybody has that in them. They
Yeah.
all have that talent, and we all have superpowers. You just got to find what your superpower is.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna ask you, what's your, what would you say to people, who are in those places right now? But I think you just did it, right? Like find your superpowers.
Well,
What
in
are those
sport,
things?
it's not grand. It's not something grand. Sometimes we make it too hard. Start before you're ready. Sign up before you're ready. Start before you're ready. Always have something on the calendar. The minute I get done with a run, I go sign up for my next. Always
Yeah.
make it public, because then you got fear of being embarrassed, right? And do more than you think you're capable of, and do something that scares you. Why do I sign up for? I'm running the Vermont 100 in August, or no, I'm running the Vermont 100K in July. You know why I chose the Vermont 100K? It scares me. I've ran 100K. I've actually ran 200Ks, 60 miles, 62 mile, whatever that is. I've ran two of those, but I've never ran them through the Green Mountains in Vermont, and it's man versus horse, right? So I'm like, okay, now I got to figure out how to run 60 miles through the mountains against a bunch of horseback riders. That scares me, and I don't know if I can do it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But you're telling everybody, and I don't know that I'm ready, right? But you got it. So just start. Sign up for it before you're ready. Do something that scares you. You can do more than you think you're capable of, and just get comfortable in that discomfort, because we're built for it. We really are built
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah. Well, hey man, I can't thank you enough for
Love it.
your time, for sharing, for your vulnerability, for the journey you've been on. Because I know for me, it's one that I watch, um, and see and continue to go. Like it gives me hope. It allows me to look and go like I got more in me, right? I feel like a lot of times you're my Jennifer Garrison, right? You're just right there out in front, kind of saying like, you got more. Come on, let's go. You got more. Um, and and it's been really cool for me, especially in the last few months, to last year or so too, to also be able to go like, yeah, I've got more, and have that more not be tied to my vocation, right? Because for all intents and purposes, I'm running in the wrong direction if it's tied to that, right? But you know what I mean? Like it's me as a person. There's more in me, and I've loved being able to watch your story. I've loved being able to uh, have you as one of my lean-ins, and for me to be able to uh, have the honor of being one of yours, and uh, I I know that there's going to be people that hear this that uh, really resonate. If people wanted to reach out to you, man, like where can they find you?
Find me on LinkedIn, Dan W. Cox at LinkedIn, and I'm on Instagram. Bigger presence there now. Put some fun. I made fun of my wife, and I had a little fun at the race today. Dan underscore Cox at Instagram. Same for Twitter. On that, are the main places you'll find me right now. Coming soon, you'll find me. I'm going to start putting some stuff out. Endurance Edge, that's my LLC, but I'm just not there, putting that stuff out a lot just yet. But it's coming here very, very shortly. So, and Joe, what we do, at the end of it, you know, when you, I, and we as people surround ourselves with successful people who want to see you succeed, there's no limit to where you can go.
Yeah, 100%, man. And it's, I think, and it's, I love too that as you talk about that, our definition for success isn't necessarily just in one
Right.
bucket. It's not just financial sex. It's not as success. It's not just what society. Success is defined by who we are, how we're growing, what we're doing, and I love being surrounded by that. That's why I love having you a part of this. I can't wait for people to be able to listen to this. I know for me is like we kind of come to a close. That idea of start before you're ready. This damn thing, this podcast started before I was ready. I can tell you that much. And
Only get better. You'll be
and
second guess to me.
yeah, yeah. And so, well, I don't know if that'll happen, but I'm getting better as we go through. But ultimately it's, start before you're ready, but that let go, lean in, and just wait and be and allow there to be space for the ability for us to see purple flowers, for
Yeah,
us to see
love
the
it.
purple metal, to see to see that and not miss those opportunities because we're so focused on, what other people think. What do they say? What are they gonna do? What are they gonna so man, I love you. So grateful for you, and your family, and can't wait to see what comes in the future. I appreciate everybody that joined, that's watched, that is listening, that spent time. I know that Dan, incredible guy. So if you really resonated with something, reach out to him. There is not a single person that will ever come on this that I don't think will connect back with somebody if they resonate and say, "Hey, I'm going to reach out." And so, really appreciate it, man. We are just everyday dudes doing life. Nothing extraordinary, uh, but we choose to do extraordinary things because we know that we're able to, and we know that we can together. So I appreciate you. Appreciate people who listened. Um, I'm Joe Mulligan. Thanks to uh, Dr. Dan Cox for coming on and spending time with us. And this is Life Mentored.